I was chatting with Heidi Paulsen over the weekend, and I said, hey, we need to get you on the show to talk about this, to give our listeners an update. And so I wasn't sure if we were going to get it done later in the week, but fortunately, she's actually on the phone right now with us here on Montana Talk. So that's a nice surprise here on this Monday morning. Heidi, thanks so much for calling into the show this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for those who don't recall, I think we first caught up with you, I think about a year or so ago, when you were featured on the cover of the Yellowstone Valley Woman magazine. And tell us a little bit more about your story, and because I know, your husband, great law enforcement officer, was wounded on the job. And anyway, so refresh folks on your story and how you're getting involved in this debate on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, my husband was a Billings police officer, served as a motor officer, training officer, family violence task force, all those good things, and was injured 17 years ago, and his injuries prohibit him from returning to police work. But in the last probably 10, 12 years, we've been working on legislation. I'm working to reach out to and kind of mentor and help injured officers across the country. And so what became a common thread is some of these problems that permanently disabled, not just law enforcement, but firefighters and other first responders face, and the lack of support that they have. And so some of the issues are state issues, and we've worked with people from other states to pass legislation within their states, but then also we were able to define some issues that are clearly federal. And so I've been working with Senator Daines, Senator Tester, and even senators from other states. Senator Grassley sponsored a bill earlier this year that has to do with PSOB, which is Public Safety Officers Benefits, out of the Department of Justice, and we were able to get that passed unanimously through the Senate in May, and it's stuck in the judiciary in the House now.
Bogged down, because this sounds like something that I know, and I just pulled up my archives here. Yeah, you and I, we chatted back. It was back in May. I thought it was further back in May. And I remember when you and I talked, it was like, well, this should just be a quick fix. I mean, so let's say a police officer gets wounded on the job. They end up having to basically medically retire due to their injuries. Fortunately, their pension is tax-free. That is until they hit retirement age. And then all of a sudden, the government decides to whack them with a major tax bill. I mean, like we talked before, this should just be a quick fix. So why is it still getting bogged down back on Capitol Hill?
So that particular one is putting first responders first bill. Senator Daines sponsored in the Senate. Congressman Ralph Norman out of South Carolina sponsored in the House. This is our second year on this bill, trying to get it through. Just having a hard time gaining any traction.
I went back and looked at our coverage from back in May. So Heidi Paulsen was on the cover of the Yellowstone Valley Woman magazine, and they always, every time the Yellowstone Valley Woman magazine puts out a new edition, they just have an incredible feature story that they share. Every edition is just remarkable. Well, Heidi Paulsen was featured back in May, and she talked a little bit about the injuries that her husband suffered while on the job as a Billings police officer here in Montana. The first injury happened in 2002 while he was on his police motorcycle following up on suspicious activity. Even with his lights on and siren blaring, a car T-boned him at 50 miles an hour. The impact threw him into a nearby ditch and caused a brain injury, broken ribs, a fractured skull and kidney, a crushed leg, collapsed lung, perforated diaphragm, and the most critical, a transected aorta. She said that his insides were scrambled. He should never have lived. He shouldn't even have made it to the hospital. And so it was just a remarkable story. And this is just some of the sacrifices that many people don't realize and don't think about, the continued sacrifice by these incredible members of our law enforcement community and our first responders. And so Heidi Paulsen's joining us right now on Montana Talks. There's two pieces of legislation. There's one that we talked about back in May when she joined us on the show. This is a bill that would basically, what it basically would do was protect these first responders, law enforcement personnel. It would protect them from being just hit with this incredibly huge tax bill once they hit their official retirement age. They're getting a tax-free pension because of their injuries now. And so what this quick fix would do, and this is a bill backed by Senator Steve Daines, would basically say, hey, look, that pension should remain tax-free, even on into their 60s and their 70s, and you name it. And so that's a good piece of legislation. But yet, for some reason, we're still waiting on that to get past Capitol Hill. There's another piece of legislation that Heidi told us about just before the break, too, which is a bill by Senator Chuck Grassley in the Senate. He's out of Iowa, and it's the PSOB bill. It's a Public Safety Officers Benefit bill. Heidi, thanks again for sticking around with us here on Montana Talks. So both, I understand one of the bills passed the Senate, just flew through the United States Senate, but has been bogged down in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, the PSOB bill that Senator Grassley put together was introduced in April of this year. It passed unanimously through the Senate in May, so just unheard of. Was incredible to be in D.C. when it passed and be a part of that. But then it's been stuck in the House Judiciary Committee since then. We've got 39 co-sponsors in the House. 30 of them are Democrats, 9 Republicans, and it's just sitting. So we've been just working to try and push that through. If we could get it passed by the end of the year, so we don't have to start all over, because if it doesn't pass through the 116th Congress, then any legislation that doesn't pass has to be reintroduced, and then you start over getting co-sponsors and going through committee and all that process. So we'd rather take new legislation to the Hill than climb back up with this stuff that already seems like a no-brainer. It should be
Yeah, it should just go through. Yeah. Well, and as I understand it, it's been stuck in the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives, which I'll spare most of my commentary for that till a little later. But we've been told all these months that no, they're still getting their work done, even though they're focused on other things in the Judiciary Committee. Well, here's a key piece of legislation that should be a simple, easy fix that apparently is bogged down in the House Judiciary Committee. Yeah.
Yep. That's where it's sitting, and it's not been up for discussion. It hasn't. It's just sitting there. What this bill basically does is the PSOB, Public Safety Officers Benefit Program, is there's a benefit to the Department of Justice that goes to families of first responders that are killed in the line of duty, but that there's also a disabled side. So if you're permanently disabled and unable to work, your family can get this PSOB benefit to help pay off a mortgage, keep your kids in the same school so you don't have to move and uproot things further. It also has a college benefit so that the dependents of the disabled officer can go to college. And we've known officers from around the country as much as 17 years down the road, they still have not been cleared to get their PSOB benefit, which by then they've lost their home. Their kids have grown up and are beyond the age to receive the college benefit. So it's just that this bill is designed to help make that process more streamlined and more effective, and so it's it.
Yeah, that shouldn't be too much to ask at all. Just streamlining it, making it more effective. Because I know, we've had tragic instances of officers down, some who've recovered who we didn't think were going to be recovered, others that we've lost. And I think we all can agree that, look, just make sure them and their families get the support that they need. I know when Trooper Wade Palmer was hit earlier this year, and as we talked with officials down there, everybody just said, hey, look, just make sure the family's taken care of, make sure they have everything they need. And so this just seems like you said, a no-brainer. What can our listeners do? What are the specific pieces of legislation? Not only, I know our congressional delegation is in support of these measures, but maybe they've got friends or law enforcement agencies, representative groups in other states to call on other members of Congress to also support these bills. What are the specific pieces of legislation that our listeners can help call in support of?
Yep. So the PSOB bill, as I mentioned, is passed the Senate. So any of your House members, it's House Bill, so H.R. 2812. is the PAFRA bill, and that if anybody can, write in, call in to your House of Representatives members, especially agencies, any departments, associations, Sheriff's Office, Sheriff's Association, Montana Police Protective Association has written in, but individual departments is really important. But if you have family members out of state that can write their representatives as well, it has more impact if if they're hearing from a constituent. And then the Putting First Responders First bill does need both attention in the Senate and the House because it's tax related. It has to pass the House first. It's House Bill HR 2560, and the Senate bill is S 1278. And those we need a lot of support on that one here again from agencies and individuals from across the country.
All right. Well, Heidi Paulsen, thanks for your continued service and sacrifice to our state and to your fellow law enforcement family members out there as well. It just means so much. I know a lot of folks, they get nervous to jump into the political fray and all of that. And so to have somebody like you out there fighting on their behalf is just huge. So thanks so much for calling in this morning.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your time, and happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, have a great Thanksgiving to you and yours as well, and all those who are going to be out on shift and out on patrol while the rest of us are safe at home.
There you go.
All right. Thank you so much.